Father, we want to be the kinds of people that obey, and obey with the right heart. We read of the many Pharisees, Sadducees, the Jewish people, many in that day, did things out of religiosity. They went down to Target, they bought their paraphernalia, they brought it home, they did the feast day, called it good. We want to have the sort of heart that we observe the appointed times, that we do your commandments not by letter, but by love. We do it, but we do it because we desire to be with you, to be like you, to leave a world of sin and entrapments, and instead give our lives over to the righteousness of God, Yahweh, our Redeemer, our friend, our God. You are everything to us. We determine today to make the kingdom of Yahweh, of you, our primary concern. Father, we're still on this side of the Jordan. But your kahal, your ecclesia, will go through persecution. Help us to not be deceived, but to stay faithful during that time of persecution, of purification. In the name of Messiah, Yeshua, we pray together. Amen. When I went to all those years of school, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze in the sense that I paid a lot of money and sat in a lot of classes, and I could have just read the Bible and over and over again and maybe studied the languages and got a little bit more. But, I learned a thing or two. I'm going to tell you one of the things or two that I actually did learn, a good takeaway, and that was by a theologian named Robert Webber. Robert Webber wrote Ancient Future Worship, a book I don't know that I would necessarily recommend. In fact, I don't know if I would at all. But there was a concept in there that was important to my understanding of what Yahweh did with the people of Israel and what he continues to do with us today. And here was the statement: worship does God's story. Worship does God's story. Now, when you read something like that and you're like, what in the world does that mean? Worship means, what is worship? So worship is abad. We are serving our King, and our King gives us instruction. So by definition, when Yahweh tells Moses, to go get the Israelites and pull them out of Egypt, out of the world, out of bondage, out of demonic things, they teshuvah, they repent from that old world, and they come out to Yahweh at Mount Sinai. I am going to show them how to abad me, how to worship me, how to walk in not the world's story, but my story. Okay? So genuine worship is the act of doing God's story. It is not the act of doing the Mother's Day story or the Veterans Day story or, church story. It is God's story. It's different. And one of the things that Yeshua's house is committed to is not entertainment. It is committed to bringing people to a place as a community where together we walk in God's story. In other words, we find out what's the place, what are the things that he has asked us to do. And that's why obedience is so important. It is not just a way that we love the Lord. It brings you into a three-dimensional discipleship program where you begin to look like the Messiah that you love. So when you truly worship, when you truly walk in the story of God, then you exalt him and you yourself become like the Messiah that you love so much. I'm not saying that it's a wrong thing to mention Mother's Day or to care about Veterans Day. What I am saying is that fundamentally, Yeshua's house is not a self-help church. We got books for that. What we're about here is to figure out what does God want for us and to walk in that story. I think I've beat that up quite a bit now. But I want you to see what we're doing here. So today we are looking at answers to hard questions, but in those hard questions and the answers, here's what I've discovered. That this text that we're going through today is far more about us being shaped into the things that exalt Yahweh as king and far less about the self-help things that we come to the text with. In other words, we might look at Matthew chapter 19 and go, well, what about divorce? Well, the text is really not actually in the first instance about divorce. It's about something else a little bit different. And you'll see what I'm talking about in just a moment. So, up here, I'm trying to do my best to put the cookies on the bottom shelf. What I'm seeking to do here is a little puppet land to give you some images that are very simple, that will help you to see what it is that I'd like you to see today, and that is Matthew is, I don't even know if he was that smart. I think he was inspired by the Spirit to write something in such a way to overlay what happens with Yeshua and the Mount of Transfiguration atop of Mount Sinai, and what happens at Mount Sinai is being played out right here. So I want to read you Matthew chapter 17, verse 20. I want you to see, you've read this before. And he said to them, because of your little faith, for truly I say to you, if you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. I remember when I was a kid, actually going down one of the freeways on the way to, I think it was, like it's Torrance, where my grandma used to live. I saw a mountain here and a mountain there, and I was a kid too, and I'm like, I've read it. I thought to myself, how cool would this be if I prayed and that mountain would jump across the freeway to the other side? And so I mustered all the faith that I could, and I prayed, like, Yahweh? I didn't say Yahweh at the time. God, I read in Matthew that if I prayed hard enough and had the faith that I could make a mountain move, might have even grunted, move. And I look out, nothing happens. And the question becomes, well, did you not have enough faith? What happens there? Well, when I was a kid, I didn't know that it was a euphemism. In Judaism, they had a euphemism that there were parts of the Torah that were so big, so important, and a problem so difficult that there would be some who were so wise that could take that mountain of molehills and mountains, and they would detangle it and then show the grace in it. And all who listened would be like kind of amazed. So there's that. But there's another mountain that I think is in reference here, and that Yeshua is teaching his disciples that there's a mountain called Sinai, but what the mountain I really want to get you to is Mount Zion, or Zion. So you've heard of Mount Zion, have you not? And you're like confused, right? Sometimes with the tabernacle, we read in the Bible, sometimes it's tabernacle, sometimes it's temple. It's like, is there two things? What's going on here? It's just one thing. Tabernacle is the movable tent that they moved around in the desert. And then when Solomon built the permanent structure, the tabernacle becomes the temple. In other words, what I'm telling you is exact same thing, but until you know the wording, you don't know. Mount Zion is a reference to the mountain of God, to how God wants to do things. So you and I, as believers, we have accepted Messiah Yeshua as our Savior. We begin to walk with him, and we are on our way to another mountain, to the mountain of the Lord, otherwise known as Mount Zion. Now, does that mean that it's an actual mountain? I mean, maybe it could be, but it's more of a principle. It's more of an idea. The idea is the mountain of the Lord is where the Torah has been written on our hearts, and the people of God exist in shalom with our God, and now you have arrived at the city of David on Mount Zion. So, if you have faith, the kind of faith that you really put your trust in the Messiah for real, so much so that you are willing to do what he asked you to do. Because here's the hang-up with Torah. Here's the hang-up with God's law. The hang-up is it's going to impede on my ability to take care of myself and do what I want to do. It's going to impede on my desire to be with my family, maybe have enough money to pay the rent, because we know that there's some laws that concern about giving, right? We all know what those laws are, and fundamentally, think about all the times that you disregard the law or say no. It's because you're scared. It's because you haven't become like a little child. It's because you don't fully trust. And so there's that fleshly part of you that just decides that I can't do this because I don't trust. Yeshua is going to say, I want you to move mountains. Now, I want you to see structurally that what Matthew does, I think it might be helpful for you to know that Matthew writes primarily to a Jewish audience. And when he does that, he's going to structure the book, and I think it's by the Holy Spirit, that he's going to overlay atop of the Exodus account what Yeshua does as he travels through the landscape, and he's going to end up at the plains of Moab. And if you've studied with me before, the plain of Moab is that last little part before the Jordan River before they cross over, and that's going to find its way here. Now, because I skipped it and I want to read it to you, is Hebrews 12, verses 18 and 22. Can you go to the next one? For you have not come to a mountain that can be touched, and to a blazing fire, and to darkness and gloom and a whirlwind. But you have come to Mount Zion, and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to myriads of angels. So I just want you to see this idea that where are we going today? We're trying to move to Mount Zion. We're trying to move from the Torah. A lot of people come to this church because they know the Torah is important. Is it? Of course it's important. But if we just do the Torah, if we just do the law without having our hearts circumcised, we end up becoming a Pharisee. We end up becoming a legalist. Now, I'm okay with legalism in the sense that I want to do what it says, but what I'm not okay is trying to find all the loopholes. You ever do that with God? You try to find the loopholes? Like I do too. I know when Shabbat starts and ends right here to the minute right here. And sometimes there's been a time or two that on Shabbat when we're done here, I go home and I'm like, I'd kind of like to go get a coffee. And I'm kind of waiting for the date to be over. Now, it's not often, but it has happened. And I think sometimes the Lord has just kind of touched me enough to say, hey, are we on a date or not? Is this a day just to be over for you? And I'm just going to tell you that it's been a work in progress with me. So if you have experienced these sorts of things in your life, just know that you're not alone. Now, I do want to alert you to the timeline here, and the first one is on the Transfiguration. The Transfiguration does, go ahead and do the top one there. We have, intentional itinerary, but go to the next one, please. So I want you to see at Mount Sinai, the Mount of Transfiguration, there's some overlap here, where Yahweh reveals himself to his people, and we have one who is like Moses, a prophet, and we went over in the Torah study today, what is it? What chapter? 18, verse 5, but what's the book? Is it? No, I can't remember. I think it's Deuteronomy. I think it's Deuteronomy 18:5. But in the timeline, the Mount of Transfiguration, and then next up, Capernaum, you'll see there Matthew chapter 17, verse 24 through 18. We have Yeshua out and about. He is not in the promised land, just like when the Israelites are not in the promised land. They are wandering around, and he is refining them, teaching them how to trust. And then the last little part here, go to the last one, is he's going to bring them to Perea. Now, when you read that in chapter 19, he's going to be there for a little while, and that is the plains of Moab. Now, I don't have time right now to express to you how important that is, but the last time I talked, I had this graphic up here about all the Israelites coming to the plains of Moab, where Moses expresses in 5 speeches how important it is to follow Yahweh, and he kind of caps it off by saying, I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses, now choose life. What are you going to choose? And they get kind of messed up a little bit because you have that whole Balaam situation where Balaam is hired by Balak, the king of Moab, to curse Israel, but Yahweh will not let him curse Israel. And so Balaam finds the workaround. What is the workaround? The workaround is, I can't directly curse them, but here's what we can do. Because they are lustful in their hearts, we can parade them in front of a bunch of women that look, nice to them, and they will begin to follow after the lusts of their heart, and they will engage those women, do bad things with those women, and begin to follow those women's gods. And they do that, and a big plague happens. Yahweh's going to test us too, by the way. Before he returns, there's going to be a tribulation period, a time of purification, a time of basically saying, you have said that you have followed me, but now that you can't buy or sell as a result of, let's just call it the mark of the beast, or however you want to say this, I'm not really sure of all the implications of what's going to happen before he returns, but we are going to be pressed. Yahweh wants to know, are you really committed to following me, or are you not? I'm going to show you now a grid, just a back and forth of the book of Exodus. So I want you to see, go to the next slide, please. So you can see here that the glory of the Lord dwelt on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And on the 7th day, he called to Moses. Notice at the Mount of Transfiguration, look at the timeline. After 6 days, Yeshua took with him Peter, James, and John, his brother, and led him up a high mountain. Go to the next one, please. And then Moses ascends the mountain, accompanied by a specific 3 people, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu. Now, Aaron, he was relatively okay as the high priest, but his sons Nadab and Abihu, they certainly messed up. But here's part of what I'm telling you is that because Yahweh was seeking to engage an imperfect people and the Israelites, even though he gave them a perfect roadmap, doesn't mean the players were perfect. So over here on the right, you can see at the Mount of Transfiguration that we've got Peter, James, and John. The next one, I'm just showing you the parallels here. Moses' face shone. He was with the Lord, and he came down. Remember, he had to put that veil over his face. And then look at Yeshua. Yeshua's face shone like the sun. Go to the next one. God descends in a thick cloud. Over on the right, a bright cloud overshadows them right there at the Mount of Transfiguration. Go to the next one. Yahweh speaks out of the cloud to deliver the covenant. And then out of that cloud on the right, he speaks directly to the disciples. And you can read there in chapter 17, verse 5. You can see that as well. And then the final one. Mishkan is just Hebrew for the temple. Israel is commanded to build a tabernacle. And what does Peter do when he sees Moshe there with Elijah and Moses? We're going to build some booths. It just seems like the right thing to do. Which points to an ultimate Sukkot. When the Messiah returns, we're going to go into a Sukkot, a consummation of the marriage, and he will dwell with us. So what I want you to see is what Matthew is doing is he is, through the narrative of the Messiah and his tracking where he is and how he approaches that mountain, he is showing the Jewish people, he's showing us and all his listeners that in fact what is happening is Yeshua, the Messiah, the Word incarnate, what was delivered at Mount Sinai is now delivered to you in the form of this man. He is the Word. Listen to him. After Mount Sinai, they wander around because Yahweh asks the spies, one guy from each of the 12 tribes, to go into the promised land, and I want you to see what's there. And as we know, only 2 came back with a good report, Joshua and Caleb. But most of them didn't believe, and they had a lot of freak-out sessions. And Yahweh disciplined them for their unbelief. And that really is something that should kind of not scare us, but should put us on alert. That, remember when I just talked to you about all the reasons we do not obey the Lord? Why do we not obey? It's because we don't trust. We do not believe. I mean, think about this. If you really believed he was all-powerful, if you really believed, would your actions not be different? Now, I'm not saying for some of the things that are not Torah-based, we can't, test God to say, you're my little rabbit's foot, and I believe, and now you're going to make all things well for me. No, that's not the way that the Lord works. But when it comes to the Torah, when it comes to his commandments, and he tells us expressly what he wants us to do, and then we don't do it, that's what I'm talking about. He's given us explicit commandments, and when we don't do it, we're basically saying to the Lord, I don't trust you or you're not my God. That's what we're saying. And that's the one that hurts to me. You're not my God. My God is my belly. My God is my own way of thinking. My God is something else, but it's not God, because God is all-powerful, and when God says to do something, that's what we do. We are his subjects, and we're not to override him. So it's with that idea that we go to the text. In chapter 18, verse 1, at that time the disciples came to Yeshua and said, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" This is what happens to people. I was just underneath the regime, think about an Israelite, I was just under oppression in Egypt, and now you've brought me out to Mount Sinai, and now I have a new king, and one of the first things that people do is, new regime, new king. I know I'm not the king, but we've got to jockey for position now. We've got to figure out a way to make sure that I am higher and not lower. And Yeshua is going to say, no, that's not how we do this here. Verse 2, and he called a child to himself and set him before them and said, truly I say to you, unless you are converted and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Converted, that word is not the best word. The word is strepho. It's the Greek equivalent of shuv, which means to turn, repent, turn. Unless you turn from wanting to be a big boy and turn that you're like a little kid, and by little kid, I don't mean like innocent little kid, it's that which is most vulnerable. So to be like a child isn't like you have to now leave your brain at the door. To be like a child in that context is they are the most vulnerable in society. If you were to push them out of the household, they got no food. They got no way to care for themselves. They are completely vulnerable. But this is exactly what Yahweh is asking of all of us. I want you to put yourself out in the cold like a little kid, knowing that I will take care of you. And until you can get to that place in your life, you have not arrived. You must be like a child. Another thing is it says, no, not in this translation, maybe in another little part. It says he sticks the child right in the center. Part of that has to do with in the camp of the Israelites, what was right at the center of the camp? The Mishkan. And then we have Aaron, and look, he's doing high priest things, and wow, I kind of would like to be a priest. I'd kind of like to, handle the objects. Again, it's kind of this jockeying for position, and remember, the temple is now us, and Yahweh is saying, unless you want to have me dwell in you if you want to have me dwell in you correctly, what you've got to be is like this little kid where you finally let go and become the most vulnerable human on the planet and allow me to take care of you. So he says, hey, unless you are converted and become like little children, you're never going to enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, the kingdom of heaven isn't necessarily a future thing. It is the rule and reign of Yahweh in your life presently. Verse 4, whoever therefore will humble himself as this child, he is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Humble. What does Yahweh want? Humble people. I cannot overemphasize that enough. He has pulled you out of the wretchedness of your sin. You are leaving the pattern of this world. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Do not give yourself over to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind and follow a new pattern. This is your spiritual worship by following the new pattern. You do this new pattern, and it's going to require humility on your part. Now, I do want to read you Numbers chapter 14, verse 3. A couple verses here. In their grumblings coming out of Egypt, they rebel against Yahweh, and one of their issues is this. And why is Yahweh bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become plunder. Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? When we do things our own way, that's essentially what we're doing, is we're saying yes to our flesh, and we're saying, Yah's not for me. I don't trust. And now I'm going to go back to the world and do it my way. Because I'm going to take care of my kids. And you're always like, oh, you don't think I had that kind of planned out? Yahweh knows about our kids. I'm going to get to that too. Now I'll creep over to verse 31. Your little ones, however, I skipped a lot of text, who you said would become plunder, I will bring them in, so that they will know the land which you have rejected. Here's what Yahweh is saying. Oh, you did not trust me. Oh, not only am I going to have you die in the desert, but I'm going to take all those kids that you didn't trust me with, and I'm going to bring them in, and every last one of them will be there. Every person that the Father has given to the Son under his care, he will not lose a one. And whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble, it is better for him to have a heavy millstone be hung around his neck and that he be drowned into the depths of the sea. We read something like that and like, ooh, pretty rough. Yep. And that's exactly what Pharaoh did. Chased after him with the chariots, and Yahweh hung a millstone around those 600 soldiers' necks and drowned them to the bottom of the sea. It all happens in Exodus. Every little last piece is right there in the Exodus narrative. Now here's the thing, is that most threats are not external threats to the kingdom. Most are internal. Most are within the camp. When Satan is trying to trip up Israel all through the desert, remember they're following the rock, Yeshua, but when they're grumbling, they're always listening like Adam and Eve. They're listening to the serpent. They're listening, and they allow the serpent to take rule of their lives, and they do things other than the kingdom, and they become rebellious inside in their heart. Yeshua says in verse 7, woe to the world because of its stumbling blocks. For it is inevitable that stumbling blocks come. Nevertheless, woe to that man through whom the stumbling block comes. Now, I've already told you, so I don't need to belabor the point, that in the story of Israel, this was Balaam. He was a stumbling block. He did something that put Israel into a position of vulnerability, and it played into their vulnerability, and they ended up walking away from Yahweh because of the Moabite women. You know, isn't that a thing? Think about what really trips you up. No wonder the Apostle Paul talks about, how would I know what coveting was if the Torah didn't tell me, do not covet? Why did he use that one? Why that commandment and not the others? It's because coveting points to the lusts of your heart. There is a part of you that you have not tamed yet. Right? There's a part of you that you have not learned to control. And what happens to you is Satan knows what that is and knows what it is, and it exploits it in your life. It hits you. You have got to guard yourself against those lusts. And the only way to guard your heart against those things is to proactively do it. First of all, how do we proactively do it? Well, we have people around us that know what those things are and help us with non-judgmentalism, help us by checking on us. We call it accountability, whatever you want to do, but you just can't live that part of your life in isolation. We've got to talk to people about it. That's in part why we can't do church online, is you can escape the very formative things that you need to have with the people of Yahweh in order to talk about these things, because that's what we do for one another. And if you're not in a situation with a friendship group in the context of Yeshua's house where you feel safe enough to be able to talk about your shortcomings, I would just say take some risks and get in those fellowship. You got to do it. And it's work. It is work telling other people about your downside. It's hard. But you got to do it. You have to. Verse 8, and if your hand or your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off. So whatever those lusts are in your heart, whatever it is that could get at you, you got to cut it out of your life. Cut it off. Throw it off from you. For it is better for you to enter life crippled and lame than having 2 hands or 2 feet or be cast into eternal fire. And if your eye causes you to stumble, tear it out, throw it from you. Your eye, so your desires, your wants, your lusts. How about your feet? Your feet, in Hebrew thought, your feet is what took you to where it is that you're going. I have a vision for my life, things that I want. It's not a bad thing to have vision or goals, but it's when it begins to overtake you, and then your goals or your vision usurp Yahweh's goals and Yahweh's vision for your life. So we have to watch where those feet go. What am I building with my hands? What am I putting my hands to? All those things. We've got to be careful. Verse 10, see that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I say to you that there are angels in heaven that can continually see the face of my Father who is in heaven. Basically, Yeshua is saying, do not be a stumbling block to others. And who are the others? Is it the kids? Yeah, it's the kids. But what he's referencing is those people who have finally got enough of their stuff going on right in life, where they have teshuvah, they have repented of the old world, and now they are following me, and they are on a trajectory of giving their whole life to me by observing the Torah, because it's in their heart and they love me, and you start to make them stumble. No, not good for you. Verse 11, no one really knows if that's in the real manuscript or not. Hence the brackets. For the Son of Man has come to save that which is lost, or which was lost. Now, it does serve, though, as a good transition to the next part. Yeshua says, hey, what do you guys think? If any man has 100 sheep, and one of them has gone astray, does he not leave the 99 on the mountains and go and search for the one that is straying? And if it turns out that he finds it, truly I say to you, he rejoices over it more than the 99 which have not gone astray. Now, in Luke chapter 15, Yeshua does the same illustration, but the illustration concerns those who are on the outside. Usually, when we think about the 99, we always think about the Luke one, where you're going out to save the lost and bring them into the kingdom. That is not how he's using the illustration here. How he's using the illustration here are those that are in the kingdom, but they have gone out or astray in some way, and Yeshua is saying, look, love your brother and sister. They have given their heart to me, and you need to be the sort of person that you will pursue those who have been wounded for one reason or another and bring them back into the fold. Now, be careful when you do that. The reason I say that is, in my experience, I have gone after people who are wounded, and sometimes, have you noticed what happens to, let's just think of an animal that has been abused, and what happens when you go after an animal that's been abused? They'll snap. So a word of caution is that is a natural reaction, and that's okay. It's okay. It's just that sometimes, and I've had to learn this, is that as I've watched the videos of dog whisperers and so forth, right, that animal that has been abused, that when you go toward that animal is going to snap and snap hard. But there's a nice, easy way, and it's a methodical, gentle, you got to let them sniff, and you're gonna have to not approach too quickly. But as you do it, you do it nicely over time. And you wait until that animal is relaxed enough and allow their anxiety to get rid of some pain that they have had. And usually the pain is with the church. Let me tell you something about church people. Church people are rough. They really are. Church people are some of the hardest people to be around. Guilty as charged. I'm not saying anything that I'm not saying about myself. But what I am saying is that there is really not, you would just think, wouldn't it make sense that church people are a little easier to be with? And I find that there are some people that have learned to be refined, and I'm just not one of them always. And my experience is that you will have parts of your life that are refined because you don't have triggers in those particular areas, but then there's some small areas of your life that get triggered pretty easily, and then you're not as easy to be around. So, unfortunately, I hate to tell you this, but that's the part you're going to have to kind of work on, all right? Just like me. I had to kind of work on it. And one of the things that I've got to do is I've got to pick up the phone. I don't really like the phone, but I got to pick up the phone. There's some people I need to call and just say, can we meet and be with them? And I say that, but I got to figure out how to do that in a way that isn't going to trigger them because of the wounds. So I don't know what that looks like for your life. What I'm telling you, though, is all of us are shepherds in some way. And just like in Adam and Eve, they messed up and they hid themselves and they walked, right? And then what did the Lord do? He walked in the garden, and what does he do with Adam? Adam, where are you? Where are you? If you want to be like your Father in heaven, you're going to have to be like your Father in heaven. I'm making up names. Cindy, where are you? Where are you? Neb, where are you? You got to call out after people. Now, you're going to have to call out in a way that they'll respond to, and you're going to have to be gentle. You know, think about Adam and Eve. They just messed up in the Garden of Eden. Yahweh has to ban them from the tree. There's some separation there, but when he comes in the cool of the day in the garden, when you read that text, do you not think that it feels way more calm than it does angry, does it not? It seems very gentle. That's what I'm trying to tell you. If you want to look like your Father in heaven, you're going to have to pursue and do it gently, but you're going to have to call them. In Ezekiel chapter 34, bad shepherds don't do this. Verse 16, this is a prophecy about Yeshua, but it says, I will search for the lost, bring back the scattered, bind up the broken, and strengthen the sick. But the fat and the strong I will destroy. Did I put that one on there too? Yeah. I will shepherd them with judgment. You know, if you believe the scriptures, those that took advantage of the career path of being a shepherd isn't going to work out too well for them. Look at verse 16. Oh, wait. Huh. I read the wrong text. Should have read 11 to you first. Can I do 11 now? I'm going backwards. For thus says Lord Yahweh, behold, I myself will seek my sheep and care for them. And then I read you the bad news at the very end. What Ezekiel's doing is contrasting the good shepherd with the shepherds who don't pursue, who don't go. The bad shepherds will leave the sheep out on the rocky places. They abandon them. They don't go after them. Even in Psalm 23, he makes me lie down where? In green pastures. So the good shepherd goes out, gets the sheep, calls them, and then brings them in and does it gently. Verse 14. In this way, it is not the will of your Father who is sent. In this way, it is not the will of your Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones perish. Now, on this one, you read that and you're thinking, well, maybe this is a spiritual thing. Maybe it's about salvation. No, this is about those who have believed but are vulnerable and they are left out and no one goes and pursues them. You know, again, in war today and back in the ancient world, a 1% casualty rate was expected. And Yahweh says, in my kingdom, in this war that I'm fighting, 0. 0 is the expectation. He will not lose not even one sheep. Verse 15. Now, this is a tough text, but I'm going to tell you like it is, and I'm not talking to anyone here, just in case. Now, if your brother sins, go and show him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have won your brother. But if he does not listen to you, take one or two more with you, so that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every fact may be confirmed. Now, we have a bad situation in our present culture today. And the bad situation is that no one likes the yearly job evaluation. No one really likes to be critiqued. It feels very threatening because we've been wounded. If you read in the Exodus 19, where Jethro tells Moses, hey, it's too much for you, and then why don't you have people who are filled with the Spirit and know the Torah, why don't you put them underneath you and arrange them in whatever groups it was, like 150 and 10s and so forth. But as you read the text, and I don't have time to do everything today, but as you read the text, they were happy. Now get this, happy when they had a dispute with each other. They would want to know what God said about the matter, so they would take it to one of the elders, and the elders would judge, and they would tell them, here's how to resolve this. And then they walked away happy because they've learned about the mind of God on the matter. And no one felt like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a most horrible day for me. Everyone thought, I want to know what God thinks about this issue that we have. When you have issues with other people in the context of the ecclesia, the church, what do? We hold it inside. And we just don't talk about it. That's not really healthy. It festers inside, and then we explode at some point. That's not what Yahweh has in mind for his people. Now again, as the Israelites are moving through the desert, he is showing them these sorts of things. Yeshua's had this Mount of Transfiguration experience. Yahweh, the Father, says, this is my son, listen to him, just like he got the instruction from God at Mount Sinai. And the same is going on here. Now, you see where it says, by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every fact may be confirmed? Yeah, that's true. Deuteronomy 19:15. You could flash it up there if you want to. I won't read it. It's a very well-known verse. But also, the reason for the 2 or 3 witnesses is if I come to you or you come to me and I point out something that is either missing the mark, otherwise known as sin, or something that is unhealthy for the congregation, and you don't listen to me, I have not won you over. The next step for me is to bring 2 or 3 witnesses. Now, I know what I would used to think was the primary role of the 2 or 3 witnesses was just to make sure that that person knew that they were sinning in the way that that person said they were sinning, because I saw it too, because I was a witness. That's not what's happening here, although it is part of it. The real role of those other people is to make sure that the process goes about gently and nicely. They are there to help support health. And if he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, let him be to you as the Gentile and the tax collector, which means you still love them, but they're outside of the fellowship now. I have never got to that point in the process. I've seen it happen one time and it was healthy. Here's the situation that happened. When I was in high school, this young couple, they had relations and had a child outside of the context of marriage. And then they knew they had done wrong, but I'm sure, I don't know this part of the process, but they went and said, hey, you know you did wrong, right? And they said, yeah, we know we did wrong. And then what they did was, well, I'm going to take it back. I don't know, when they came before the church, they seemed to be repentant at that time. And they came and stood in front of the congregation, and they said, you know what? We had relations outside the context of marriage, and we're going to have a baby. And here's what the church did. You did something wrong. We love you. We forgive you. We've made plenty of mistakes too, and we're certainly looking forward to our new baby. And my point to you is that when issues are addressed in the context of a church, it doesn't have to be bad. It has to be truthful. And we should all seek the mind of Yahweh on the matter. Now, let me read the rest of it, and then I'm going to hit Hebrews here in a second on purpose. And if he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. So the process is, if they still refuse, then if they won't even listen to everybody in the body, then you let them be to you as a Gentile or tax collector. Verse 18, truly I say to you, whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. So the idea here, it's a legal phrase, and the legal issue is that if you've noticed that the instruction or the Torah of God doesn't address every little issue in church body life. It doesn't. So the role of the elders of a congregation are to be responsible to address those issues. And here's the thing. If you're a part of the body and the elders do it wrong, it ain't on you. It's on them. Your job is to submit in that process. And if you're wronged, then it's on them, not on you. But I'm going to get to that. Let me just hold on to that thought for a second. What we know is in any local body is when those elders come together and they make a formal decision and they seek to honor the Lord in the decision and they bring it to you, Yahweh says, whatever they bind will be bound in heaven. It's just a way of saying it is important to me, and whatever they say is going to be binding for the congregation. Now, if it's explicitly against the Torah, then it's a no-go. But if it's not explicit against the Torah, if it's a matter of either interpretation or it's a matter of certainly what I find body health, the health of a congregation, then it is binding. But just hold that thought. Verse 19, again I say to you that if two of you agree on anything that they may ask, it shall be done for them by my Father who is in heaven. For where two or three are gathered in my name, I am in their midst. Now, we all know that everyone uses that as a proof text, like, I just got together with two or three other believers, and now we're a church. That is not what's going on with this text. Now, he is certainly with you, but it doesn't mean that church is necessarily going on. It could be, and he is certainly there with them, but the thrust of this text is that wherever two or three elders are gathered in the context of rightly dividing the word of the truth for the purpose of a healthy body, Yahweh is with them. That's what's going on. I'm going to read you something from Hebrews. I'm going to tell you a personal story because you need to hear it. In Hebrews chapter 13, this is your job. Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they keep watch over your souls as those who give an account, so that they will do this with joy and not with groaning. For this would be unprofitable for you. So in any congregation, you have the people, of which I am one, and then you have an elders, which I also am one. Sometimes I play the role of the one who's being corrected, which I do, and then I sometimes play the role of elder. Now, if a person is not an elder, I'll tell you that managing people who make it difficult for the elders it's not good for anybody. It is not good for you, and it is not good for the congregation. And the elders want to eld with joy and not with groaning. You think about Moses in the desert. Did he ever get a little unjoyful with the people and tell the Lord about it? Yeah, many times, because they were a stiff-necked people. Now, I'm going to tell you this because it's just good to share. You all know that I'm an elder here, but you need to know that I'm also a parishioner. And so one of the elders looked at something that I was doing, and I wasn't doing it directly. It was like it was something that I wasn't doing, but I was allowing for it, and I thought it was okay. And they said, I don't know if that's a good look. And I said, and it kind of baffled me a little bit because it was really helpful. And I'm like, is there any law against this? Is there anything in the scriptures that say this can't be done? And he's like, that's not it. It's something else. Part of it was him looking at my life and what was going on, and it was just minor, but it's a way for me to share with you, because I would actually prefer that it was continuing on because it was very helpful. And he's like, yeah, but I don't want anyone on the outside of the world to look at what we're doing and have any cause to go, ooh, those Torah people, they're so legalistic. We don't want to give them anything that could mess up our witness. So what do you think I did? Continue to correct him? No. I did not. I said, you know what? This is what I did. Good point. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, and it needs to stop immediately, which I stopped immediately, and it was pretty easy. When you get rid of pride, when you have the kingdom of Yahweh as your primary concern, there are a lot of things that are permissible for my life, but my goal is not what's great for my life. Just like it was permissible for Yeshua to skirt the cross. But he decided that for the good of the body, that he would die to himself at all parts of his life, even death on a cross, so that the body could do what the body needs to do. So, I work hard to model these kinds of things. And it's good for you to have that in your own heart. So we're at the end of are we at the end of chapter 18? No. Oh, gosh, so long. Then Peter came and said to him, Lord, how often shall I forgive my brother when he sins against me and I forgive him? Should I do this 7 times? Now, there's some reversing here of Lamech in Genesis, but I can't get into that today. In verse 22, Yeshua said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. I mean, that's a lot. There is no end to this forgiveness. Verse 23, for this reason the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his slaves. And when he had begun to settle them, one who owed him 10,000 talents was brought to him. Now, 10,000 talents is kind of like Elon Musk money. It's just a whole heck of a lot. But since he did not have the means to repay, the Lord commanded him to be sold, along with his wife and his children and all that he had, and that the repayment to be made. Therefore, the slave fell to the ground and was prostrating himself before him, saying, have patience with me, and I will repay you everything. And feeling compassion, the Lord of that slave released him and forgave him the debt. Now, you know where Yeshua is going with this, right? Have you not been forgiven for a debt that you can't repay? Of course you have. And to which you want to say to all of us, well, let's act like that. Have you been wronged? Well, it's not like you haven't wronged the Lord, and you have. How ungrateful do you have to be to harbor things in your heart? The body of Messiah is not benefited by people who are walking around unjoyful because they can't let stuff go. That is one of the issues that I have seen with any congregation I've been a part of, is people can't let stuff go. Let it go. It's so much better. It is happy to not have the weight of issues of people on your shoulders all the time. How about with your family too? I mean, I got issues with some family stuff. But I can let it go. I can let it go. I can forgive. I can get over. I can move on. I can. Verse 28, but that slave went out, found one of his fellow slaves who owed him 100 denarii, a smaller but payable sum, seized him and began to choke him, saying, "Pay back what you owe." So his fellow slave fell to the ground and was pleading with him, saying, "Have patience with me, and I will repay you." Now, I don't have time to go into it today, but what's happening here, post-Sermon on the Mount, is all the times that the Israelites did not observe what's called the Shemitah years. Every 7 years, you let your slaves go. The big 50 was coming up, the year of Jubilee, and Yahweh was going to forgive the debt of all people. And you can't every 7 years treat your brother and sister in a way where you can let stuff go. Everything that's in Israel, every time that we do not let it go in the context of our fellowship and in the context of our family, you're just doing the Israelite stuff all over again. It's Shemitah years all over again. You won't let it go. If there's any angst in a fellowship, it is because you're being stiff-necked and you can't let it go, just like the Israelites. But he was unwilling, verse 30, and went and threw him in prison until he should pay back what was owed. So when his fellow slaves saw what had happened, they were deeply grieved and came and reported to the Lord all that had happened. And then summoning him, his Lord said to him, "You wicked slave, I forgave you all that debt because you pleaded with me." Isn't that what we did at repentance? Should you not also have had mercy on your fellow slave in the same way that I had mercy on you? And his Lord, moved with anger, handed him over to the torturers until he should repay all that was owed him. My heavenly Father will also do the same to you if each of you does not forgive his brother from your hearts. I don't know how else to interpret that. Yeshua seems to be moving from a parable story into, I'm going to just now tell you straight up like it is, if you don't forgive and let stuff go, doesn't seem to be good for any of us. Let's not do that. All right. Any questions? Questions or just need clarification? Yeah.
So, in that instance, what you just mentioned, if someone has something against you and but won't give you details, they'll say something and you say, well, I don't remember that. Can you help me understand so I can address it?
Sure.
But they don't really give you, this has happened to me a lot in my life. They don't give you detail like, well, this day, and this day. So you can say, oh my gosh, I didn't know I did that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't happen, but you decide I have to forgive and let it go, but they still come at you. What do you do in those instances where you're trying to let it go and forgive, but the other person is not?
Well, first of all, you are not responsible in that way for other people.
Well, I know, but they bug you in the process.
Well, I understand that. It doesn't mean you have to always answer the phone.
Well, no, it's not the phone always.
Yeah, you want to be more specific in a way that doesn't,
Well, it's I don't know how to say it, but sometimes I don't know when I'm doing things.
yeah,
I think I'm fine, and maybe someone takes something wrong. But rather than say with detail, you said this or you did this and it hurt me, it's ambiguous.
yeah,
So you do the best you can to say,
sure,
I'm sorry, I don't know what I did, but will you please forgive me?
yeah,
But then you in your heart have to let go that they're coming at you, right? And so
Yeah,
I ask the Lord to help.
totally,
But then the person or people, I know I'm a lot. So I know sometimes it's difficult.
yeah,
So I have more of that probably experience than most people do. But in my whole life, actually. But when they keep coming at you, maybe with the same thing, with a new thing, there's something there that they're not letting go of.
gotcha,
But I don't know what it is.
yeah.
So I don't know
Well, you
how
can't
to
be
handle-
responsible for things they're not telling you.
So what
But
do you-
here's another,
but
here,
what do you say to them to get them?
you say either tell me something specific so I can actually correct something that's specific, because I can't address something that I don't know.
Right.
So I've had to do that with plenty of folks. And also, when I come to someone, it's always best to have, pre-write it down, 3 objective bullet points, because feelings are squishy. But if you can give them 3 objective bullet points so they can actually understand, that's helpful to people. Now, when I say write down 3 objective bullet points, this is not there to maim them. It is just try to phrase things and do things in a way that is more neutral in your presentation. But might I say something on this issue? This is something I learned a long, long time ago. Any strength carried to an extreme is sin, generally speaking. Generally, okay? The strength to speak in front of people and be direct, that can be a real strength. But you can get to a place of, oh, I'm going to let you have it right now. And then you get that little sassafras inside your heart, and then you directly say something, and your assertiveness becomes aggression, okay? So there's that modality in our hearts that we have to be aware of with each other and with the outside world. Also, I've heard this phrase that not good. That's just the way I am. No. We all know how you are. And this is not acceptable for you to continue on in that. So whatever it is, like you say that you're a lot, right? This is something that you tell me.
Well, I just said it.
Yep,
But,
sure.
I mean, this
and you're
isn't
pretty forthright about that.
Attack Kathy time either.
Well-
But what I'm saying is, I have worked a lot on myself with the Lord at 60,
Yeah.
almost 68 years old now.
Sure.
So it's not like I'm saying, well, that's just the way I am, and I'm going to keep doing it. But
Good.
there is a point where God makes us all different for a reason. You know, I was told I was unusual. I've been told many things.
Yeah.
But I don't use that to say I'm going to make everybody's life miserable, because that's just the way I am. I do work on it. I pray about it. I ask the Lord about it constantly. Please show me the truth so I can follow your truth.
I
Or
felt
how-
pretty
you know, how
safe
to
in
help.
saying that to you, because I have never known you personally to say that's just the way I am. You're aware of who you are, but your desire is not to hurt people.
No, I don't.
I know you. That's part of the reason we all love you. We know Kathy is Kathy, but at the same time, you're so joyful and happy that it's pretty good. It's a good thing. Your disposition, your heart is evident to me and to others. So that's good news for you. I'm going to talk about for me for a sec. I have to be aware of where my issues are in life, and I must always work to get those things in check, because I cannot get to a place of allowing my flesh to overwhelm me, my family, and the congregation that I'm a part of. And so it's a constant work in progress. So whatever those things are for you, you're just to be aware of it and don't yield, don't give in to your flesh where we get lazy. I mean, that's just a common sense thing. Well, that could be,
Well, but I like to resolve it.
yeah. Not all things are resolvable. Not people, I have noticed that
Go to him.
ultimately there will be some people in this world that do not want to confess Messiah Yeshua as Lord. They'd never resolve that relationship. And that is not that's not the Lord's issue. That is their ultimate choice that they do not want to resolve. So it's a great question. It's something that we all have to face.
One little thing, I'm not perfect. I'm very fully aware of that.
Well, I mean, no one is. I want to make sure that I get through the divorce one. Okay? Oh, we do? Sorry, I couldn't see.
Okay, I'll go quick. Okay, so after hearing you talk, I just want to make sure I'm getting this right. So it talks about if a brother sins against you, does this process only apply to those in your congregation?
It is for the congregation because in the context it is for that. It doesn't mean that the principle doesn't apply outside the congregation. It's just you have no elders to take it to.
Right.
Right?
And that's my other question. It's just like, what would that look like with whether it's family members, friends, or even those that are Torah observant but may not have the same leadership structure? How would this process look?
Well, I think if you have two Torah observant fellowships that have a different group of elders, then they would still submit to an eldership process. So it could be that you go to the person and then do it, privately and nicely. And if not, then we do the witness thing. And then if it doesn't resolve after that, then it might be, and this is where the scriptures don't say, you can either bring it to your own elders, and then the elders might say to you, you know what, maybe this one for the health of their congregation, you take it to their elders and ask them about it. But here's the thing. Whenever we take anything to elders and we seek to address issues with people, I want you to know something. The goal always is restoration. It is never to hurt. It's only for restoration. If your goal is not restoration, don't talk. And I can tell you that. Any time that I've ever gone to anybody, it has only been to restore and protect. That is it. It is not, no one's here to hurt people. I mean, at least I want you to know the elders at Yeshua's house, definitely only to protect a congregation. That's it. I'm with these people. There is no issues other than we just want this thing to be around in 20 years. That's the only thing we want, is to make it healthy for our kids. Over here. I hope so.
Just to speak to both of that, what they both said, but also I know we're going into divorce and all. For me personally, I really do lean on dusting the sand off my sandals, because when, especially in Kathy's example, when the person is just stiff-necked about forgiving the situation, you too, if you stay in that and dwell on it, like what did I do, or whatever, why did they do it, whatever, you end up with resentment. It plants a seed of resentment and unforgiveness in your own heart. So I mean, my suggestion, I just always lean into that. Like I will do it the way that Yah has guided me to do it, but I will walk away too, so I don't hurt myself. So
Sure, I think healthy boundaries are fine.
Boundaries,
Sure.
right? Just knowing when to walk away from a conversation that's not going anywhere, like casting your pearls onto swine. Like,
Well, I even think Yahweh, in Jeremiah 3, he wrote a certificate of divorce. There was a time like, I got to take a little break here. And he took a break with Moses. He was really angry at Israel, and the intermediary of Moses said, no, please, for your own name's sake, let's not nuke these people now, please. And Yahweh relented. There are times that Yahweh took a break from Israel. And there might be a time when Yahweh kind of takes a break from you. And he just kind of gives you a little time out, a little space, because you need it. Okay? Do you have a question? You have to put the mic to your mouth, though.
One is...
No statements, just questions at this point, because I got to move on.
This is not about divorce. It's not a question. It's a statement concerning the number 13. Number 14.
Numbers 14. Okay, gotcha.
Shall I continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we know that Caleb, they sent out the spies across the Jordan to the promised land. And there was 12 spies, and 10 of them were said, they saw those Nephilim, descendants of Nephilim.
Yeah.
And they said, we're like chickens, we're like grasshoppers,
Yeah.
And they didn't have the faith. They didn't have the faith in the power of God to overcome those just near giants.
Yeah.
So they said, we want to go back to Egypt. We want to go back to Egypt. We're who left us out here to die in this wilderness. We should have been back as slaves in Egypt.
Right.
But Caleb and Joshua said, I don't care how big those giants are. When God is, through God's power through us, we can do anything. So, but the ones that believed, the ones that, the 10, God terminated them. And the people that believed them, those people wandered in the wilderness for 40 years.
Okay, Howard, I need you, what is the point? We know the story, so what is the point?
I'll relieve the phone.
Okay. Chapter 19. It's 45 here. This divorce text, this is not in the first instance about divorce. This is about the Pharisees trying to look for a loophole, because it was pretty ubiquitous in the culture that if you had a wife that you didn't like, you could discard her pretty quick. And they were trying to get around that, and they wanted to know what Yeshua thought about this. Now, hold on, I don't know where your brain's going right now, but let me clarify my statement. Back then, you had two schools of thought, like big-time religious elite people. One of them was called Shammai, and one was Hillel. Shammai held the interpretation of how it is that you could divorce a woman, and it was basically on strict adultery. And then Hillel was very liberal, and his view was, she didn't cook well that day, you could try it, you get a do-over. And everyone liked that, because the men who were pretty arrogant in that time, and when I mean arrogant is it was a patriarchal society, they loved that rule. But Yeshua wasn't like that. Now, I want to start reading so you can kind of see where we are now. Now, it happened that when Yeshua had finished these words, he departed from Galilee and came into the region of Judea beyond the Jordan, and large crowds followed him, and he healed them there. Now, where are they? They are now on the plains of Moab, getting ready to cross over the Jordan. When you cross over the Jordan, you are in a metaphorical place of you're trying to go into the promised land. And they came to him at that time, some of the Pharisees, verse 3, they came to Yeshua, they tested him, and they said, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason at all? Because that's the school of Hillel. And he answered and said, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? And said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So what Yeshua does here is, he's like, you're trying to get me on some loopholes with the Torah, but I'm going to take you all the way back to Genesis. I'm going to quote for you Genesis 1:27, which was back then was not 1:27, but for us it's 1:27, and also Genesis 2:24 about this union or the covenantal relationship between a man and a woman. Verse 6, Yeshua says, they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate. Okay. Yeshua has come to his holy mountain, and he is seeking to gather a holy bride, a bride of Christ, a bride of Messiah, unto himself. And he wants to take her into the promised land. And essentially what they're kind of trying to trip Messiah up on is, we just want to get into heaven. And where are all the loopholes? And Yeshua is like, no, you're not getting this. That the law of Moses does instruct about what life is. You do it, you walk in life, for sure. But a lot of the law of Moses is designed for people with really, really hard hearts. The fruit of the Spirit is what? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. I think I got the order right, though I'm not sure. Against such things there is no law. Okay? The law is still good and right, but if you really did it, you wouldn't even need most of these laws. That came as a result of their stiff-neckedness. I would never even allow Moses to say that, okay, you can divorce if you were still all following me and being married in a covenantal relationship that you should be. It was not even necessary to have some of those laws, but I gave them to you because you could not get it together. Now, some of the laws, like the feast days, they are as a result of you can't get it together because, and Yahweh knew it would happen this way, that we would all be sinners in need of a sacrificial lamb, and so we have all the feast days to point to that. But had we not messed up in the Garden of Eden? Okay? In other words, a lot of the laws are a result of the fall. That doesn't mean that it wasn't there in Eden. It's just, and I wasn't in Eden, so I can't really tell you qualitatively what that was all about. But let me continue on. They said to him, why then did Moses command to give her a certificate of divorce and send her away? In other words, look, if you're going to take us back to Genesis and tell us what marriage was really like, why did Moses write this law? And he says, verse 8, he said to them, because of the hardness of heart, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning, it has not been this way. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another woman commits adultery. So, the text, here's what the text is really about. They're on the plains of Moab. They're getting ready to go and cross the Jordan, and they're looking for loopholes, and he is questioning their hearts. Yeshua is saying, you are to be my bride. You're my disciples. Where's your heart? Are you looking for loopholes? I mean, why are we even talking about divorce? I mean, I just want you to love me. I want to love you. If your heart's with me, we don't even have to talk about this. We can just cross over together. But the truth of the matter is, your hearts are hard. You're jockeying for position. You're not walking humility. You haven't been willing to let everything go and just follow me like a child. You're always looking for loopholes. Now, I want to answer a couple questions because here's what happens to people. If you are divorced, you read that and go, I'm not really sure, because maybe you were divorced because of something other than sexual immorality. And then if it was that, can I get remarried and all that kind of stuff? So let me answer that question first. In 1 Corinthians 7:15, I'll be up here because I got to speed along. Yet if the unbelieving one leaves, let him leave. In other words, in the context of Corinthians is if you are a believer and you're married to an unbeliever and the unbelieving spouse leaves, you can let them go. The brother or the sister is not enslaved in such cases, but God has called us to peace. Okay? In Malachi 2:16, for I hate divorce, says Yahweh, the God of Israel, and him who covers his garment with wrong, or the Hebrew word is a violence. There are some, usually it's women who are abused. And people like, my husband is emotionally abusing me. He is, he's strung out on drugs. He's not supporting the family. But the scriptures say that I can only be divorced. And by the way, divorce, you got to remember, it's the context of a covenant relationship. And there's many ways to break that covenant relationship that is not sexually, not just that. And so Yeshua really is addressing more of a inner life sort of thing here. And he is talking about sexual immorality. That is certainly the case. But he's talking more about the most intimate part between a male and a female. And Yahweh taking the male role, the bride of Messiah taking the female role. And what do we find in the scriptures? When they commit idolatry, what does Yahweh equate that to? Sexual immorality. You have gone and you spread your legs under every green tree. You've prostituted yourself. Not only that, but you pay them to do it to you. At least a prostitute, she gets paid. But in your case, you're doing the paying. I mean, Yahweh is hurt. And he's finally with these guys, and they're looking for loopholes, and he's just saying, do you love me or do you not love me? Now, in cases of violence, but there's this overarching thing, Leviticus 18:15. Let's look at it. It's there. You shall keep my statutes and my judgments, which if a man does them, he shall live by them, and I am Yahweh. Why do I quote this with regard to divorce? Marriage is to be a covenantal relationship. The purpose of covenant is to bring life to individuals. I'm not saying this is a way to get out of a marriage for just any old reason. We are going to endure because we're in utter covenant relationship. Think about your relationship with Yahweh. Well, you want Yahweh just to leave you? No, you don't leave. But at some point, Yahweh's like, you're just not in the relationship. And you're doing gross things. And Yahweh gives them a certificate of divorce in Jeremiah chapter 3, verse 8. Now, he reneges on that, but he goes all the way to say, you guys are just not really in covenantal relationship with me. And he just calls it for what it is. Now, I just want to see the disciples' response. The disciples said to him, if the relationship of the man with his wife is like this, it's better not to marry. Now, the disciples are getting a little snitty with Yeshua here. He's like, well, if that's the way it is, I mean, maybe not marry because I can kind of get some yummy on the side. I don't really need to marry anyone. Yeah, that was my code for, I don't know how to say that. I actually do not think that way. I didn't know how to express it at the moment. Verse 11. But he said to them, not all men can accept this statement, but only those to whom it has been given. For there are eunuchs who were born that way from their mother's womb, and there are eunuchs who were made eunuchs by men, and there are also eunuchs who made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. He who is able to accept this, let him accept it. What is Yeshua basically saying? He's basically saying, you had a lust for the world, and you were spreading your legs under every green tree. But some of you love me so much that you were willing to shut down your flesh completely in order to follow me. So I'm looking at the time here, and I've done it to myself again. And so what I'm going to do is just summarize for you. In chapter 19, verse 13, then some children were brought to Yeshua, so that he might lay his hands on them and pray. And the disciples rebuked him. But Yeshua says, nope, you're still not getting it. Now, this is what's interesting to me on this little part here. He's transferring, in some sense, not his authority, but he's transferring who he is and the kingdom onto these kids. Why the kids? Because they are the ones that are the most vulnerable, willing to let it all go. And you disciples, until you are willing to let it all go and follow me and trust me completely, you're not like little kids. Rich young ruler. In that section here, starting in verse 16, and behold, someone came to him and said, Teacher, what good thing shall I do to inherit eternal life? And he said to him, why are you asking me what is good? There's only one who is good. But if you wish to enter into life, keep the commandments. And he's like, well, I've done all that. And then Yeshua says, hey, go sell everything. Let me tell you just what's going on here. Don't think for a moment that Torah observance is going to save you. Now, if you love me, Jesus says, you will obey my commandments. That is true. But the obedience is not the love. The love is the love. One of the byproducts of true love is you trust and you obey, and so you know the commandments, and then you walk in them. That is part of the love. But in Yeshua's day, they were doing a lot of those commandments. You and I have more incentive to do the commandments because we love, because our general culture says if you do that, you're psychos, and you don't understand your scriptures, and you're in bondage. Okay? Well, I'm in bondage. I'm a bondservant. Okay? So what he's saying to them, what he's saying to the rich young ruler is what he would say to all of us. You were a part of the world. You were part of Egypt. You were enslaved to those gods. I do want you to come out of that. I've saved you by grace through your faith. It is because of what Yeshua has done. But let me tell you something. Just doing that, looking like a Christian, getting baptized, going through obedience isn't the whole shebang. What I'm looking for is a love relationship that is genuine, a personal relationship where you've given your heart to me and you are willing to sell everything you've got. You don't in your heart want to actually return to Egypt. You want to follow me. You want to be mine. That's what he's looking for here. Verse 23, and Yeshua said to his disciples, truly I say to you, it is harder for the camel to go through an eye of a needle. Okay? Eye of a needle is in the wall of those cities. They would often have something called an eye of a needle that a camel could go through if it sucked in real tight. Could have got in, but it's just, a camel can't just go in. So it is a possible thing, but the idea here is that the kingdom of Yahweh is available even to this rich young ruler, but he's going to have to make the ultimate choice in his heart to leave what he has and begin to follow for real. And I think that's one of the issues with all of us is, when are we going to do stuff for real? Verse 27, then Peter answered and said to him, behold, look, he's still not getting the message. Hey, we've left everything to follow you. What then will there be for us? And Yeshua, I'm sure, is like, well, wait, time out. Have you not been listening to everything I've been saying? This is the wilderness experience of the human life. We are all there. We are coming up to the end of your life. You will die, or he will return, but we are all kind of gathered there at the plains of Moab. And the questions that we ask by our actions are, what are the loopholes? How can I serve myself? How can I, how do I get out of serving others? How do I not be compliant? Whatever it is. And Yeshua is just like, just so you know, I can read through all your stuff. I see it all. You can delude yourself, I'm pointing over there, but I don't mean to. It's kind of in my general direction. You can delude yourself, but you can't delude the Messiah. He knows you better than you know you. So what do we do here? If I were to go through, he's like, hey, for my name's sake, just so you know, if you can do this and do it right, you're going to receive 100 times as much, and you're going to inherit eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and the last first. What's Yeshua kind of getting at here? And by the way, it's unfortunate that there's a chapter break in chapter 20 because the thought continues on here. Here's what I know about our Messiah. You cannot fake him out. He knows. And we cannot hide behind following the commandments. You can't. I know a lot of people pretty good at following Torah, but they won't forgive. And they hold grudges. And they do a lot of things behind the scenes. And I'm just like, wait, time out. Follow the Torah. Do the law. But get some happiness in here. And let people off the hook. And come to them if, you know what, there's been times where I'm the one that's done the wrong. And I literally, it's kind of backfired on me a little bit. I try to figure out what I've done wrong. And then I go to them and say, you know what, I did this wrong. And I am serious. I try to find a truthful thing, but then they step all over me. I'm like, that didn't work. I was trying to model humility, trying to model what it means to eat a little bit of crow and just say, I'm sorry. And I'm not even and I actually do it, but they step on me and I'm just like, time out. This is ultimately in human relationships, it's a two-way street. And I'm just telling you, if you need to let someone off the hook, let them off the hook. Let them know, you know what? Either I was wrong or, I just love you no matter what. I don't know how it all works, but in as much as it depends on you, I wrap up by saying this. Stop finding the loopholes. Follow the Torah, but understand that there's got to be something deeper in one's heart that needs to be in love with the Messiah, that needs to be like a child, and also needs to walk with their fellow believers. I mean, think about Yeshua. Think about the God of the universe bringing all these people out of Egypt. They're walking around in the desert. He's totally providing for them, and they're and then Korah comes along, Korah's rebellion. Do you guys have to make every day bad? What? Can't we just make people's lives okay? But the only person that you can work on is you. So, work on it. How about starting today? Why don't we stand and sing a song, and then I'll come up and pray.